Today we are going to be baking these delicious, decadent oatmeal raisin cookies. They are very easy to make, super delicious, and I'm going to show you how step by step. So let's go over the ingredients we need to make these oatmeal raisin cookies. You're going to need, of course, some oats, and the recipe calls for quick oats. And I'm going to be honest, I didn't have any quick oats. I don't normally buy quick oats. But what I did was I took my 3 cups of regular oats and I put them in my little Ninja blender for like less than a second. Just zip, zip, and made quick oats, because that's all a quick oat is a finer, thinner cut oat than the regular oats that you have to cook longer. So I have 3 cups of quick oats. I have 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour. You don't want to use bread flour for this. You want to use all-purpose flour because we don't want a flour with a high gluten content in our cookies. And then you're going to want 1 cup of raisins. And what I do anytime I'm cooking with raisins, whether it be in bread or in a cookie, is I measure out my 1 cup, then I put that 1 cup in a bowl of warm water and let it set for a few minutes, and then drain the water off. This softens up the raisins so that your bread or your cookie does not have hard raisins in it. I just think it makes a world of difference if you just soak the raisins. You're also going to need 1 cup of butter, salted or unsalted. I can't really tell that it makes that much difference. You're going to need 2 eggs, 1 cup of white sugar, 1 cup of packed brown sugar. You're going to need 1 teaspoon of salt and 1 teaspoon of baking soda. And you're going to want 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, a 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg, and 1 teaspoon of vinegar. Now, I didn't have any white vinegar, so this is apple cider vinegar, but it'll work just fine. And that's all you're going to need to make these cookies. Now, there's a few steps in the order of how you mix these things together. The first thing you want to do is get a separate bowl and add in your flour. And to your flour, you're going to want to add your salt and your baking soda. Then you're also going to want to add your cinnamon and your nutmeg. And we're just going to mix this together a little bit. I have some lumps in my flour I'm trying to get out. I just want it to be a little smooth. So just mix that together a little bit. And then you're going to set that aside. You don't have to worry about mixing it too much, just mix it together a little bit. And then we're going to take our mixer bowl to our stand mixer, and we are going to add in our sugar, our white sugar, and our butter. And 1 stick of butter is equal to a 1/2 cup, and we need a cup, so we're using 2 sticks of butter. Now we're going to put this on our stand mixer. Pull this over here so we can see better. So we're going to lock in our bowl. And we're going to cream our butter and sugar together until it gets a little creamed together. Some might call it fluffy. We're just going to cream that together. I'm just going to help it along here. All the butter seems to be clumped up on the paddle. So I'm going to scrape that off. Scrape down the sides of my bowl. Let that go again. Okay, so our butter and sugar is creamed together, and you can see how it looks kind of fluffy. That's what we're after here. And so now we are going to add in our 2 eggs. Okay. Now we're going to cream in our eggs. Just mix those in a little. Now we're going to add our sugar. There's the brown sugar. I'm going to go ahead and add in my teaspoon of vinegar in with my butter and sugar and egg mixture. Okay, now that's looking pretty good. You just want to make sure you don't have any big lumps of sugar or any large lumps of anything. It's just all creamed together and mixed together well. And now we are going to add our flour. I'm just scraping down the sides of my bowl. And this is our flour and our salt and our soda and our cinnamon and our nutmeg. We're just going to add that in. And we're going to let this mix until it's mixed well. That looks like it's mixed really good. I'm going to scrape it down and scrape off my beater. Just mix it one more time. Make sure everything's mixed up good. We'll let that go for just another minute more or so. Okay, so that looks good. It should be kind of light and fluffy looking. This is what it should look like. I'm just scraping it off of my beater. Scrape down the sides of my bowl. Now we're going to add in our oats. So we're just going to add the oats in. And mix those in. And I always mix the oats and the raisins on low, because I don't want to macerate them. I just want to get them mixed in. So once you've got your oats all mixed in, if you're like me, you might scrape your beater down. I don't know. I just like to do that. I'm going to scrape down the sides of my bowl. Now we're going to add in our raisins that we have soaked in warm water so that they're not all dry. And if you wanted to add nuts to your cookies, this would be the time to add them when you add the raisins. It doesn't take much to add those raisins in. Now you're going to have a very stiff cookie dough here, and that's what we want. You don't want it to be too loose. I'll take this beater off. I'm going to take my pan out of the mixer here. Just going to scrape down the sides of my bowl. Now, one thing I like to do is I like to take my dough and chill it, just because that makes the cookies easier to form into balls. So I'm going to take this dough and I'm going to put it in the refrigerator for about 20 minutes, and then we'll come back and get our cookies in the oven. Our dough has chilled in the refrigerator for about 20 minutes, so it's nice and easier to form into the balls. And what I usually do is take a tablespoon, and I just guesstimate. I dip out about a tablespoon of the cookie dough and then just roll it into a ball. You don't have to flatten it or anything. Just roll it into a ball. So this is about the size, just for reference, and place it on your cookie sheet. Now I have my cookie sheet lined with parchment paper. I actually have 2 sheets of parchment paper on here, and I will show you why when my first batch of cookies comes out of the oven. And I don't always get every cookie exactly the same size. They're fairly close, and I am placing them about 4 fingers apart on my cookie sheet. This might be a little big one, I'm not sure. Sometimes they get a little bigger than others, and I think I'm gonna be able to fit maybe 3 across. It just makes rolling them out so much easier when you have chilled that dough. That way it's just not all sticking to your fingers. It just makes it easier, I think. It's worth the wait to chill the dough. So I'm going to fill this cookie sheet up. I have my oven already preheated to 350 degrees. So make sure you have your oven preheated, because you don't want to put the cookies in an oven that is in the process of heating, because they will burn on the bottom. And we don't want burnt cookies. Now we bake these cookies for 10 to 12 minutes. Now I happen to know that in my oven, 12 minutes works out perfect. But if you've never made them before, you might want to set a timer for 10 minutes and check them. And if they need to go another 2 minutes, then you can wait 2 more minutes, and then you'll know it takes 12 minutes. But just make sure your oven is up to temperature, because if it is not, that is really going to mess up the baking of your cookies. So make sure it's preheated and completely up to temperature. Now I usually go ahead and bake all of my cookies. If you don't want to bake them all in one day, you can seal this cookie dough up in a container and keep it in your refrigerator, probably for a week or more in the refrigerator, and just get it out later and bake them. Now I'm getting kind of close to the edge here, so I think I'm just going to put 2 more right there. You'll just have to be the judge on your cookies as far as how many you can fit on a sheet. We don't want them to flatten out and bake together and touch. I mean, if they do, they're still edible, right? We just want pretty cookies. So that's how we're going to do it. So I'm going to put these in my preheated 350 degree oven, set a timer for 12 minutes, and then I'll bring you back. Woo. Okay, so the first batch is out of the oven, and they look beautiful. Now I'm going to show you why I have 2 pieces of parchment paper. Now this is a little tricky, and sometimes I do mess up, but most of the time it works great. So you know how when you first take cookies out of the oven, they're very soft. Like I couldn't get one of these out off of the parchment paper right now without just destroying it. But what I can do is take my parchment paper and just slide it out of my pan onto my island. Now you're going to have a surface which can take the heat, and then I'm just going to let them sit there and cool, and I don't have to bother them. And then on this second sheet, I'm going to put my next batch of cookies. So I'm going to finish baking all of the cookies, and then we will come back. So all of our cookies are baked. We ended up with about 2.5 dozen. Now my cookies are larger than what the recipe calls for, 1-inch balls when you're making your cookies out, and mine are a little bigger than that. So I ended up with 2.5 dozen, and that's usually what I end up with. If you want smaller cookies, you can definitely roll your cookies out smaller. When you make the little ball, just make it smaller and you can have smaller cookies. But these are beautiful, delicious, decadent oatmeal raisin cookies. And what I usually do to store them is I will put them in a Ziploc bag, and I will separate the layers with parchment paper so that the cookies don't stick together, and just keep them sealed up, and they will last. Well, they usually don't hang around much longer than a week here, but I'm not sure how long they'll last. If you're going to keep them longer than a week, you might want to put them in the refrigerator. If you're going to be shuffling them about a lot, you might want to put them in a plastic container so that you don't break the cookies up moving them around. But I just store them in a Ziploc bag. But you could also put them in any kind of sealed container. For me, they always stay soft and fresh. I don't have to do anything extra to them. I certainly hope you'll try these beautiful, decadent oatmeal raisin cookies. They're super easy to make and super delicious. I'm sure they'll be a big hit at your house like they are mine. Thanks for stopping by today. God bless. Bye-bye.